Hey you guys, welcome back. This is Marty, and today I have a lightning build for you guys, and we're using the Zephyron Herald of Change two-handed lightning weapon, which allows us to cast lightning spells. And I really wanted to try and utilize this weapon and see, how far we could get with this. And I think it's a really fun build. We're using the Death Gazer railgun and the Avenger auto turret, along with Anomaly. With the lightning modifier on, you can actually use these abilities. Everything that has a lightning damage, you're able to use with this weapon. So I figured that I could use the railgun because it's based on lightning damage, right? And also the Avenger auto turret we can use when we have the lightning modifier on here. And it's a pretty fun build actually. Let's just head in here and I can show you guys what it's all about. So let's jump in a 127 and just take a look at how it plays. So far I've been having a really great time with this, and it's quite fun because you can actually use an anomaly to lock the enemies down, as you can see here. And then you can stand here and charge up your railgun to the maximum and just blast them down. And it's actually doing a quite okay damage. It's so fun. It's just satisfying to be able to utilize this. So along with the charge and the whirlwind bladestorm ability here, you could actually get quite a bit of movement as well going on, and which makes it even more fun, right? You have the Thunderstrike as well, so when you use the Thunderstrike you buff up all your attacks. And we have the Immortal Offering as well, and using Sparking Dart also from the passive skill tree. It's not the most powerful build, but it's definitely a fun build to try out. Just if you wanted to try something different, I wanted to show you guys this. Obviously this is the first version of this build that I've been working on, and I'm going to see if I can improve this even more in the future here. But maybe I really hope that the unique items will get some sort of buff up, so that it could be useful in a lot of other situations and other builds. Because this is really fun to put these kind of builds together with the unique items. I'm it's kind of a little trouble here. But obviously I'm going to explain everything to you about the active skills and the passive skills and everything, what you need to know. But for now I just really wanted to show you guys here how it plays out. It's doing a lot of small tick damage, and then when you use the railgun here, you are able to place down this trail as well. As you can see, if I charge it up right now, charge it up to full, and then it leaves this trail on the ground, and it's actually doing a lot of damage. And I think it's quite good that it could. This could be like a mid-range build. I'm doing a 127 now, and I've done a 139 as well. It took me some time to get through it, but I could get through it with this, so it's quite fun. But let's head back to town, and I will dive a little bit more into how the skills are set up, and the passive skill tree, and what kind of gear that I'm using, and all this kind of stuff, and what kind of damage that we have buffed on the gear as well. You know, we're using a lot of elemental damage. Let's check here. Just gonna open this chest. So let's head back to town and have a look. Alright, so let's take a look at these skills here first. The Death Gazer Railgun. We are using the ether piercing ammunition here, so we are 100% sure that we can apply stasis to the enemies, and buffing up with some extra damage here. One simple shot, extra crit damage. And the skill's area of effect increases. When you charge up, it increases every time. For every step that you charge it up, it will increase. And you can see here, if this shot is fired at a minimum charge, a trail is left behind that deals damage to the enemies. And it doesn't really say how much damage that you're going to be doing to the enemies, right? But well, if I charge it up fully, it's like 40-50k ticks. So it's pretty good. And increased damage for every time. Oh, sorry, for when the enemies are slowed, we get increased critical damage on them. So this is how I've set up this skill. And we're able to use it because that we are wielding Zephyron Herald of Change that allows us to cast lightning spells. So that is required. You have to have this weapon to try out this build. And now let's see the Avenger auto turret here. We are running with increased damage, twin repeater for extra damage, Cyclone Lightning Cannon. And you have to pick this node because else you won't be able to use it with this two-handed weapon. And this allows us to have 2 active turrets as well. And then we have the Unstable Engine of Destruction that increases the damage dealt, but it reduces the duration time that is up. But I'd rather have the extra damage. You can see we are sitting around at 9.5k here, so it's buffing up nearly 2k in average damage, so it's pretty good. So we don't have the auto targeting function, but when we can place down an anomaly, then we know where all the targets are, right? So we just point it in that direction. You can see if I shoot in this direction, I can place the anomaly there. I can start charging up my railgun as well, so hit the enemies, right? So it's quite efficient, and you could also run in with the Blade Storm and hit them with these shock waves from that. Let's go through with this as well. You can see Imposing Will here is a shockwave is released after this skill is cast and deals damage to the enemies. So you actually just point on where you want to like end. If I use Blade Storm for this location here, then when I reach this location, all the shock waves will go out and they will do a lot of damage and apply ailments as well. So it's pretty good. And we're running here with Long Pommel, which increases the area of effect, echoes of meat holes. So we have an extra chance to spawn health globes, and this also includes the green globes actually. So this is a pretty strong node for this build. It's Cascading Rhythms, critical hits inflicted with this skill increases its damage tick rate. And we're running with some extra damage here at the end. So we have, next up is Warpath here. We're running with the shockwave effect at the end as well, and fire damage, and then increased damage based on our block chance, and increased the damage dealt with the skill, and then again extra damage here, 20%. And now the charge is no longer interrupted by crack control effects. So this is your panic button as well. You're able to get away and do some damage while you try to get away, right? And it's sitting around 9.5k here, 8.2k here on the Blade Storm, and 14k with the Death Gazer Railgun. And you can see here when I use the Thunder Strike, you also get this lightning buff. Then we will sit at 21k damage here with just the railgun. So it's pretty good. Now let's check out Thunderstrike here. Oh, I actually forgot to put down this last note here, but a Serpentine Scar is increasing our ailment damage and extra average damage here from that node, and increases the skill's critical chance when it deals damage to shocked enemies. Since we're doing a lot of lightning damage, there will be a lot of shocks going onto the enemies, so this is quite good actually to get some extra critical chance when you have the shock applied anyways to the enemies. This is not the most used spell in this build actually, but I use it to regain rage when needed, and also when you use Thunderstrike, be careful because the power charge points will go down really quickly. You can see every time you do damage with it, it will go down quickly, and once it started to go into minus, then it will decrease your damage. So you should always, the bar here should always be in this half here, so that you are gaining damage from it. Now let's see the rest. Hangman's Lever is extra critical damage, and Rebuilding the Trinity. When cast, this grants the extra buff, lightning buff that we want, so we can increase all our lightning damage on over all these 3 skills here. So it's quite nice. And Presumption of Guild. The skills Lightning prioritizes enemies that are suffering from effects that deal damage over time. And I have this because we also use stacking other ailments like burn. You can see here we're stacking burn on them. So yeah, I just think that it's that this is pretty good actually to have on, because then you can actually choose which ones you will hit the most with this ability. So with all that said, we've gone through all the skills now. Let's take a look at the gear here for a moment. And on all your gear pieces, you would want to have elemental damage. You see this ring, for example, we have got lightning damage added to attacks, elemental damage, and lightning damage from the gem. And here on the legs, we have elemental damage, ferocity, cooldown decrease for all skills, some extra force shields, just a little bit of defensive here to get a little more up. I'm pretty low on force shield, so I wanted to have a little bit extra here. And obviously the sword, you're going to need this. This will increase your lightning damage and add a lot of lightning damage on top of your attacks. Now elemental damage and movement speed. I will not choose any feat that doesn't have extra movement speed. I just can't do without it. It's so important to have movement speed in this game to get away from all those attacks from these champions you're fighting along the way. So definitely get movement speed, elemental damage, and toughness if you can. Ferocity for extra crit. We have got a lot of crit from the passive skill tree as well, so crit is definitely a good thing to have. Right now I'm running with O'Malley's Lucky Belt. I just haven't found a good belt that grants critical damage and also elemental damage and lightning, extra damage to lightning. So I am holding on to this for the moment. When I run, I typically run around 120s right now with this build to farm for some new pieces, and yeah. So right now I'm using this one. Elemental damage, ferocity, some wisdom, force shield on this one. If you can, you could get a hands that will also decrease cost, which is really good. But I've chosen this one because it has really high elemental damage and it buffs up the lightning, burn, and everything. So elemental damage here on the other hands as well, gloves here. And the other ring I'm running with right now is the updated version of Seal of the Arbiter, because it's buffing up the melee weapon damage a lot. and that includes actually the railgun damage and the Avenger auto turret damage. So mainly I use Anomaly to keep the mobs in place while I blast them down with these two skills, and this is extra utilities to place elements. I use the Blade Storm, and Warpath is actually just to get away and, you know, put some extra damage on sometimes if you can. So yeah. So we have the chest here as well, a little ton of toughness and elemental damage on this one. Running with some resistances. Some of the resistances that I had in the lower end, like a cold and material, was really low, so I had to put in some gems for that. Elemental damage on the shoulders, critical, score and ferocity. Elemental damage, some rage and willpower cost decrease, and elemental resistance. You can see elemental resistance, that's one of the ones that I was missing, so I try to even it all out, so I have some resistances into everything. And here running with elemental damage and some wisdom, which is good for placing the elements. And right now I'm using this this necklace, lightning damage and send to all attributes. Shadow damage, this is not as important. You know, you would want to have damage that added up on top of your attacks, and it should be in the elemental section, like fire, frost or lightning. But this is what I got for now, and I'm trying to find something that's better, and I'm going to improve it. I've been playing this build for like 40 hours, I think, for now, and there's still room for a lot of improvement. But as I said earlier in this video, that this is the version 1.0 of this build, so I just thought it was so cool that I had to show it to you guys and give you, maybe you guys have some greater ideas about a lot of things here, so just put them in the comments. Let me know what you think, right? But let's take a look here at the passive skill tree now. As you can see, it's a little bit scattered all over the place, but let's start here with in the crit section, grabbing up some crit here, and also grabbing this assassin for the critical damage, so that we can get some really high crits going. I really think this is still a very, very nice and strong node, so I kind of tend to put these points in nearly every build that I made, to be honest, because it's just one of the ways that you can scale up your damage. So crits is very nice, and then we're just grabbing this node right here because it's extra 10% critical damage, which is really good. And we're running over here, grabbing some extra 150 max willpower and rage, because we're also utilizing the Manic Slaughter, so we would definitely want to have extra rage so we can do even more damage. 8% extra damage here, grabbing up some element chance, and then just picking up the 8% extra damage here simply. And I skipped this one because I do not want to gain too much willpower, because mainly our skills are based on rage usage, so yeah, I want to have as much rage as I can, and if I need any willpower, I just simply put down a turret and I get a ton of willpower back then. So yeah, that's how I do it. Now this is this section done here, so let's start taking a look here on the other way around the skill tree. Grabbing up some melee weapon damage, and all this melee weapon damage will buff up your weapon, and this will buff up the Death Gazer railgun and the auto turret as well, because the base damage on those skills are based on your melee weapon damage. And I have this 200 weapon that are doing quite okay damage, and I just buff it up as much as I can because it will buff up the base damage of the skill. So that's why I've chosen to go this way over, And then we are going over here, grabbing extra damage and grabbing the extra lightning damage here and grabbing the elastic sparking dot. Now, this is a device skill node, and it's also buffing up everything that has to do with lightning. So as you can see here, it's buffing up with an increase by 200% multiplied with your current number of power charge points. If you have a positive power charge point, you get increased damage. If you have a negative power charge point, you will get your damage will be decreased, right? So you want to keep the bar at the right side, at the positive side of the numbers at all times to get increased damage from this node. And also we have a 30% decrease in the power charge point cost for all device skills. I'm not sure if this is only device skills or actually all the lightning skills. I haven't tested that out. It's really hard to measure on a decrease in point cost. So, but I still think it's worth it because mainly we're using the auto turret a lot, and this is a device. So I think it's definitely worth it to be able to maintain the points to the positive side, right? Now, we're also going down here and to grab the immortal offering that will give us a lot of extra damage from all the elements that we are placing, and then we are grabbing the Kabbalist here, Grievous Afflictions, so we can apply 2 additional elements. This applies to both our base attack and also our skills, and I will come back and talk about these elements in just after we finish here with the passive skill tree, guys. Now we are moving down here as well and grabbing up the Undertaker node from Plague Bringer that will give us these green globes that pop up when a enemy dies. Sometimes they pop up, and when you pick it up, you get a 30% extra damage. So you can pick up like 2 or 3 of them, and they will stack on top of each other. So you can get a lot of extra damage here for picking those up, and I think it's a fun playstyle as well. So for me, it's just a big win. Now, as mentioned earlier, we also have the Manic Slaughter here, which will grant us extra damage for all extra rage that we have. And I'm also utilizing these 2 points here so we can grant rage every time that we kill something, and every time that we take a hit we'll get extra rage. So up in the Child of Fury section, we are grabbing up the Furious Appetite so that we will start generating rage instead of willpower. And when we are above rage, when we are above 750 rage, our skills will have 100% extra cost, but they will do double damage. So if you are full with rage, if your rage points is to the maximum and you charge up and use the fully charged railgun, it can do a lot of extra damage, which is pretty nice. You can do up to a 400k damage, and then leave your trail and do the tick damage afterwards as well. And you can do all this while the enemies are caught inside anomaly. It's genius. It's pretty fun, guys. You have to try it out. Alright, let's see here. So we are moving on to the Warlock section, grabbing up extra max to rage. Extra max to rage here again. So we're grabbing as much extra rage as we can on the journey here while we pick up the nodes that I've chosen. And also we have some extra elemental damage right here, and grabbing the residual energy. This will buff up our attacks with 30% extra damage each time that we cast a spell. So when you cast Anomaly or when you cast Thunderstrike, you will buff up your attacks with 30% extra damage. And while you're also using Thunderstrike, you will get the lightning buff, as I mentioned earlier, from the active skill inside Thunderstrike. This will give you an extra damage on top of this one, so it's pretty good. It's a good buff. Alright, so for the last points here, I've chosen to go and buff up my two-handed weapon damage as much as I could right here, and extra crit damage 5% and two-handed weapon damage is also good. And then grabbing up this 12% extra two-handed weapon damage. So yeah, this is the progress for now for the passive skill tree, and I will continue to improve on it as much as I can. And if you have any better suggestions for me, please let me know. It will be lovely to improve on this. Now, we were supposed to do something here. Let's just see. You can see here with the points that we are on the 100 now. So if you get to the minus side, you will start to decrease your damage. So at all times you need to keep it up here. But I also wanted to talk to you guys about the elements, as I mentioned. Now we can apply two different kind of elements, and the elements that you have here in this sheet is burn and shock. But remember that this only applies to your direct damage hits. Your basic attacks is all of this is your basic attacks. If you hit the enemies like this, and you never do it with this build. So the elements that we are really applying is from the skills. You can just see it simply by hovering over here. You can see that we are placing down shock, stasis, burn, shock and curse, and burn, shock and cursed as well here. And when you pick up the green globes from this node, you are also doing poison damage. So we got shock, stasis, burn, poison. There's 4 different types, and you got the extra buffs from here as well, and it will buff up the damage a lot. It's when you're running around fighting, picking up globes, and everything is working and everything is on top here. I'm at 40k average damage with the railgun, and when you know that you have all your buffs up, it's about time to just drop in an anomaly like this, and then just fire up and blast away with your weapon like this. So I think it's pretty fun build, guys, and I will continue to improve on this one. And you can see the way I spent my points here is that I spent a little bit into wisdom, a little bit into toughness, a little bit into ferocity, simply to get the crit chance up to about 30%, and also the ailment chance over 30%, along with the passive skill tree. You can see here we are at 33% here, and on the skills you could also improve with some of the nodes. You might be able to increase the ailment chance score, you can see here. So yeah, but as long as you're above 30%, I would say that you will place ailments down pretty often, but still room for improvement, and there's a lot of room for improvement on my gear. I do not have great gear for this, but it's what I have for now, and I'm going to improve it. But I just simply want to show you guys that even though there's so much room for improvement right here, you're still doing a fair amount of damage, and I'm running like 120s on farm, and I'm having a good time with this build. So I definitely just really wanted to show this to you guys and share it with you, and hopefully some of you can use this to something. Maybe you could use it as a base and try to improve on it, and you know, yeah. So with all that out of the way, thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, and I will just see you in my next guide. Bye bye.